reached the age of maturity, and they could dust their hands of all obligations towards her forever. Of course, they'd had their own families to look after. One day, though, Amy would finally establish a family of her own, and then she would be fierce in its protection. And unlike some hopelessly overprivileged and thoughtless young men, she would never turn away from them. Even the idea of such a betrayal was. A flash of blue water caught her gaze, distracting her from her ire, as the thick woodland cleared ahead. Aha! Finally, the famous elfen mere. It was the site of the late Mr. Harwood's legendary wedding gift to his wife, a spell that had lasted for a mind-boggling 3 decades by now, to create the Boudicot's most unique and acclaimed festive meeting place. Over the years, Amy had devoured dozens of newspaper reports about the spectacular masked balls, dazzling theatricals, and world-changing international negotiations that regularly took place beneath the seemingly calm waters of that lake. Emissaries from Angland's allies, among the various African nations, the Marathan Empire, and even the widely distrusted new Deniscan Republic, had all danced and schemed beneath the blue, along with representatives from the local fairies who shared Angland's landscape in a state of uneasy détente. Soon, if she succeeded in impressing Miranda Harwood, Amy would find her own place in those negotiations. She had been waiting her entire life for the chance, but of course, being Amy, she hadn't merely waited. She'd spent the last 3 years making detailed lists of plans for exactly how she would manage it. If there was one lesson Amy Standish had learned in 20 years of being unwanted by her guardians, it was that planning and perfection were the only sensible strategies to manage life with her head held high. And then she met the Harwood family, and every one of her plans was thrown into turmoil. Now Amy hesitated by the lakeshore on the night of the spring equinox ball, ensnared by memories and hopelessly tangled in emotions, until a familiar voice spoke suddenly behind her. "There you are!" Miranda Harwood's words broke through Amy's swirling thoughts. "Still worrying over all the tiny details?" Amusement rippled through her mentor's rich, warm voice as Amy gave a guilty start and stepped back from the lapping waves of the elfin mere. "Trust me, young lady," Miranda said. "If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's this. No matter how perfectly you've planned anything, something will always go amiss." "Oh, Mother," said a second voice. "As if you'd ever allow that to happen." Amy could actually hear the eye roll in that younger female voice, and she couldn't help the rueful smile that tugged at her own lips as she turned around to follow it. Cassandra Harwood was 13 years old, bursting with energy, a small and fiercely irrepressible force of nature, and the absolute bane of her famous mother's existence. Mischief glinted in her brown eyes now as she nudged her mother's waist with one impudent elbow. "If anything ever dared go amiss in a party you'd organised, you'd simply look every guest in the eyes and inform them that it had never happened. You know they'd be far too intimidated to disbelieve you." Miranda cast her own eyes to the night sky. "If only either of my children felt the same way," she said dryly. "Perhaps one day, if I'm extraordinarily fortunate." "Standing dreaming outside your own party, Mother?" That affectionate voice was adult and male, and so was the jacketed arm that slipped around Miranda's shoulders. Amy's throat tightened as she tipped her head back. The fond smile she'd been wearing suddenly turned fraught in her own head, a matter of urgent strategic importance. Should she? Shouldn't she? It was a friendly smile, she told herself firmly.